East Moot. I'm Louise Barrington, the director of the Vis East Moot, and on behalf of the entire Vis East Moot team, I welcome you to this 19th iteration of the competition. I'm very delighted this year that we are partnering with Hong Kong's arbitration and mediation platform, EBRAM, and they are going to help us, or are helping us, produce this year's arguments for the Vis. For today's meeting, I have a couple of announcements before we begin, but I'd like you to note that, first of all, the information session is for you to familiarize yourselves with the way the Vis Moot operates. Now, if you've already participated in the Vis East before, either last year or the year before, then you have a pretty good idea of what's going on. However, the platform's different, and some of our procedures are different, and some of them will affect you. And that's the purpose of this session today, is to make sure that you're aware of those and you can use them to your best advantage. Before we start, I'd like to mention a couple of things that have just come up recently. Following the withdrawal of the Mary State University this week, we've made some changes to the scheduling, and those schedules changes affect 4 teams. And you're going to be getting a message by email. You may already have it in your inbox about those changes. So if you are one of those teams that's affected, please make sure that you record the new partners that you have. And it will also mean that there are a couple of teams that have to argue twice on the same day. We're sorry about that, but it's out of our hands. We have to do that to get the arguments in. Speaking of teams, we've noticed that a large number of teams have somehow managed to double register their oralists. So we'd have Jane Clark twice in the same team. Now, this doesn't sound like a very serious problem, but for you, it is a serious problem because this is going to mess up your participation and your certificates. The records will not be kept properly. If there are 2 Jane Clarks in the system, then the scorers will record the marks from the first argument under Jane Clark, and then the second scorer for the next argument may use the other Jane Clark. The system thinks there are 2 of you, and so they'll probably assign the marks half and half, which means that you'll only end up with half the marks you want, and that's not a good look for your team or for you. So if you really do have 2 Jane Clarks on your team, then make sure that you differentiate them. So maybe one will be Jane Ellen Clark and the other will be just plain Jane Clark. But please make sure you haven't double registered. And if you don't think you've double registered, go and check anyway, because we found a lot of teams have managed to do it. Maybe you've got 2 people working on this on the team page. I don't know why, but we really are having a problem with this. So please do fix it up. So our program today is in 2 parts. The first is the technical aspects, which I'm going to turn over soon to our capable EBRAM partners. And we'll be answering questions following that part. Then there's a second part called Do's and Don'ts that Ingeborg Schwenzer and I put together in Guadalajara a few years back. And this one is for you in terms of the content and advocacy tips to make your presentation as smooth as possible. Some of you have done a lot of pre-moots, some of you have done 1 or 2, and some of you may have done none at all. Especially for those who've done none at all, I do recommend that you have a listen or a look at the do's and don'ts. And even those who've done it before, you may find it entertaining. So please, I encourage you to watch that. As I said, the link for that will come up on the screen in the chat. And there it is. I can see it there. You can click there to get that link, and you can use it after we finish here, or it will be available from now until the beginning of the Vis East week, Orals week, and you can look at it at your leisure at that time. As far as the registration is concerned, though, please do that right away. So at this point, I'll turn the program over to our capable partners, Erica and Alex and Frida from EBRAM, and they're going to take you through some slides about how things will work at this year's Busiest Moot.
Thank you, Louise. So, at least 3 days before the Moot competition, we read the Visit Moot rules carefully and follow them exactly. Log into your team account and check the details of your 4 general round hearing sections. For example, time, parties, and Zoom hearing link. Download and install the latest international version of Zoom. Find a suitable venue that is quiet, private, and has a stable internet connection. Please note, wired internet is usually more stable than wireless Wi-Fi. Test the integrated or external camera and microphone of your device or the device which you will be using for the oral arguments. Prepare your device for hearing. A desktop or laptop device with the specification stipulated below is strongly recommended. You may also use a smartphone or a tablet as a backup. In case the two oralists are arguing remotely from each other, discrete communications between solely the oralists by text through such devices are allowed. Day of oral arguments. Log into the link assigned to your team at least 15 minutes in advance. Change the username to reflect your relevant information as seen below. For oralist, team name hyphen respondent or claimant hyphen names of oral advocates. For all other participants, guest or role hyphen team affiliation hyphen name. Please refer to page 5 of this manual for the method of signing in EBRAM Zoom video conference and page 6 of this manual for the method of changing your username. Once the host manager allows you access to the main room, you will receive a prompt. The note, be punctual. Be ready to join the Zoom meeting no later than 15 minutes before the time of your argument. Teams arriving more than 15 minutes after the commencement of the hearing section forfeit the round. Signing in. Follow the access link provided to you in your team account. Every argument has a different access link. Changing of username. Click Participants. Click on your existing username and select Rename. Input the team name according to the instructions set out in page 4 and click Save. It is particularly important that the teams ensure that they understand the instructions on the following pages. For page 7 to 9, it is regarding microphone and speaker configuration. For page 10, it's about how to join a bigger room. Audio configuration. After you have been admitted to the main room, select the microphone to be used. Remember to also select the microphone to be used. Mute your microphone. Just click on the microphone icon to mute your microphone. Joining a bigger room. The host manager will invite you to join your hearing room for your section. Click Join Bigger Room.
So around 10 minutes before the hearing session, so after you have been admitted to the main room, The host manager will check each team name and role and participants' names. The host manager will invite the two teams to their designated hearing room. During the entire hearing section, including when you are pleading or answering questions from the tribunal, no screen capture or recording or anything of this nature is allowed. Please ensure that your microphone is muted when you are not speaking. Please you may refer to page 10 of this menu for how to mute your microphone. The arguments are approximately 1 hour long, with each school pleading for 30 minutes. Teams must keep their own time. So to mute your microphone, simply click on the microphone icon in the bottom left corner of your interface to mute your microphone. After teams have presented their arguments, teams will remain in the hearing room and the arbitrators will be directed to a breakout room. The arbitrators will rejoin the hearing room after their deliberation and provide feedback to oralists. Everyone needs to leave the hearing room after the tribunal has given their comments. VC's Moot Foundation will announce the 32 teams advancing to the next round on Thursday, 31st of March at approximately 10:30 to 10:45 p.m. Hong Kong time. The results will be announced on the VC's Moot social media account. Details will be provided in due course. Important notes and emergency contacts. If your team, without notice or excuse, fails to appear for a scheduled hearing session on time, the tribunal, after notifying the host manager and waiting for 15 minutes, will conduct the hearing ex parte. Your team will forfeit the points for the specific hearing section. Your team is responsible for any technical issues arising from your device or internet connection. During the hearing section, if your connection is lost, you should first try to reconnect to the system using the original or backup device. Or you could have an alternative oralist continue the unfinished arguments. Timing will be temporarily paused for a maximum of 10 minutes. Once the alternative oralist continue the arguments, the tribunal will give the scores to your team based on the overall performance of the previous oralist and alternative oralist. However, since neither of the two oralists completes the whole arguments on their own, neither will be personally scored. In case of emergency during the hearing sections, please contact the emergency contact person listed below. For any pre-event technical issues relating to the Zoom video conferencing system, you may contact EBRAM at case@ebram.org. If you have time, please click the link below for browsing the video entitled Do's and Don'ts at the VC's Moot for guidance on how to approach your oral advocacy for the VC's Moot. If you're interested to know more about VC's Moot Facebook and EBRAM, you can scan the QR codes here. So we are now going to show you a video. And this video is just to show you how the participants switch between breakout rooms. Please note that it is not a real case simulation. After all the participants have entered the main chamber, the main room, the host manager will first direct arbitrator to the hearing room for 5 minutes discussion. The discussions may include agreeing the chair and hearing procedure, and appointment of one co-arbitrator to monitor the time. At the time when the arbitrators finish the discussion, the host manager will invite the two competing teams to the hearing room. Time begins to run when the first oralist begins to present. Each hearing should last 60 minutes in total. Each school should speak for 30 minutes, deciding how to split the time for each oralist. After the competing teams have presented their arguments, the teams will remain in the hearing room, and the arbitrators will be directed to a breakout room to deliberate the performance of the oralist and submit the scores online or directly to the host manager. So after 10 minutes deliberation, the host manager will send arbitrators back to the main room, hearing room, to provide comments on the oralist performance. So now we can see the host manager is diverting the arbitrators back to the hearing room. All the participants inside the hearing room will leave after receiving comments from the tribunal. So I think that's it for the demonstration.
Well, then now, if there are any questions or comments, we'd like to hear from you, and please use the chat facility to do that.
Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you, Alex and Trita, for the demonstration. So if there is any questions from you, please input it in the chat room or in the Q&A section so we can see the question and share our answers with you.
Are these slides available online? The presentation is available online, so you can come back and watch this again at any time. Other questions? Is it right to say we don't have to download any other software than Zoom? That's correct. Yes, you don't need that, anything else than Zoom. One question that some of the newer participants ask is, when do we get our scores? Do we get the scores from the arbitrators? And the answer is no. The scores do not give you any scores. The arbitrators don't give you any scores at all. They give them privately to the host manager, and they're put into our system, and they are announced only afterwards. Are there measures in place that prevent people from recording or taking screenshots during the oral arguments? To my knowledge, there are no physical measures in place to prevent people, but it is against the rules. And if you are found doing it, you will be sanctioned.
Hello, Louis. There is a question from an attendee that does the 30 minutes speech time for each team include a rebuttal and surrebuttal?
Yes, it does. And so that means that if you're going to divide the time equally, each of the oralists has 15 minutes. And at the beginning, they should decide and agree about whether they want to have rebuttal or, in the case of the respondent, surrebuttal. And that rebuttal time or surrebuttal time is it comes out of the 15 minutes. So if you want a minute for rebuttal, then you should plan to speak for 14 minutes plus 1 minute of rebuttal.
Thank you, Louis. Hi, Louis. There is a question from Helen that will there be a penalty to pleading in different rooms instead of next to each other? And how will teamwork points be given in that case?
There's no penalty at all, of course. We understand that in many cases, the teams simply cannot get together. We've actually had teams in different cities. And so there's no penalty whatsoever. In fact, we have allowed the use of texting by telephone between the two halves of the oralist pair, so that you can, if you need to, pass quick messages while you're pleading. Those may not be used for communicating with anyone else other than the pleading oralist. But there's certainly no penalty, and it's to be expected. The teamwork points are given by the arbitrators the way they see you working together. And they will understand that if you're not in the same room, that you can't work together in quite the same way as you would do if you were sitting side by side.
And Louis, there is another question from Paula, who says teammates not in the same room are allowed to communicate discreetly through text. Is it correct?
That is correct. You can use your phones. I recommend you have your phones there as backup in any case, but in case your main level, if your main communication goes down for any reason, you can use your phone to get in again. But you can also, the two oralists who are pleading may communicate with each other only via text.
There's another question. Can we see the timer controlled by the arbitrator?
Interesting. The arbitrator, there's usually one arbitrator who will be keeping time, but the teams are primarily responsible for making sure that they stay within the time limits. So you don't have access to the arbitrator's timekeeping device, but I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to have a timer on screen. That was discussed, and I'm not sure whether that's going to be in effect or not. But the short answer is you need to keep your own time.
If there is any case of any difference between the time count, what can we do?
I don't understand about any difference between the time count.
I think he means that if there is a difference between the time counts from the team, between the team and the arbitrators.
Well, there shouldn't be more than a couple of seconds difference. I don't think that they're both going to start at the same time.
Thank you, Louis. Is there any more questions from you? Feel free to ask us questions about the Moot and also the procedures, if you have any.
And for those of you who are watching this not live, but at some future date, if you have questions that you haven't heard answered here, don't hesitate to write to the Moot info@CISG Moot and pose your questions there, and we can take care of them.
Okay, Louis, there is another one. It says, will the team be questioned by the arbitrators during the rebuttal? What if it has already reached the time limit?
Well, the time limits are a little bit flexible in that sometimes if an arbitral tribunal feels that it's taken up a lot of the time of one of the oralists, they will allow an extra minute or of time. In rebuttal, normally, rebuttal is not used for introducing new ideas. So hopefully the rebuttal will simply respond to something which has come up by the other sides, in the other side's argument, which you had not addressed. And so it should be very quick. I wouldn't expect questions on rebuttal or rebuttal.
Louis, there is another one. Can we invite other guests or friends to see the proceedings?
I understand that the current rule, if I remember correctly, is that we don't allow other people in the room simply because it's very difficult to control it when we're not actually there. It's very difficult to know whether any other person is in the room. So the rule is that everybody who is speaking, that is the 4 oralists and the 3 arbitrators, that's it. And the host manager is supposed to control that. This also is a protection for you because we have had on occasion teams who have inadvertently gone in to watch a team. This is in the live sessions, and suddenly realize they were watching a team that they're going to see tomorrow. And that's considered scouting, and it is bad news.
Thank you, Louis. There's another one. Is there a certain time for the competing teams to discuss the order of pleading and time allocation, or the arbitrator will direct the teams to submit their preference?
The teams and the arbitrators all start off in the main hearing room, and the arbitrators will go off for 5 minutes to talk among themselves. Sometimes they don't know each other and they like to find out who they're arbitrating with, of course. And in that 5 minutes is a good time for the teams to say, well, you know, how do you want to spend your time? And do we want rebuttal and surrebuttal? The surrebuttal and rebuttal choices are up to the individual teams. You don't both have to have it. It's up to the speakers.
Louis, there is another one.
Sorry, I'll just let me finish I should have mentioned that usually when you go into the hearing room, the tribunal will introduce itself and they'll ask the teams whether they've made an arrangement. And if they haven't made an arrangement, then they'll do it there and then with the arbitrators. If they have, fine. Of course, the arrangement is also subject to the will of the arbitrators. If the arbitrators want to hear about something first, they may ask you to do it that way.
Thank you, Louis. There's another question. Are researchers not be allowed to observe the hearing?
I'm sorry, who's not allowed to observe the hearing?
There's a question asking, are researchers not be allowed to observe the hearings?
If you're talking about your team's researchers, the members of your team, of course they're involved. Of course they can come. What we're talking about is people who are not involved with the team, either as oralists or as coaches or as other team members. If the researchers are members of the team, they're allowed in, of course.
And are we expecting further team rescheduling for physicists?
As I mentioned earlier today, there is a rescheduling now, which has just gone into effect, and you should be receiving news of it, if not now, within the next few hours. And it will be it will be recorded on your team pages of those teams who are affected. There are just 4 teams that are affected, and they will have the news directly on their screen, on their team pages, as well as the email from us.
Okay, thank you, Louis. And Louis, there is another one. Are coaches allowed in hearing? And I think it is a yes, right?
Absolutely, yes. They can't talk to you, but they can certainly listen and watch.
Are there any more questions from you? If not, I think this would be the end of the demonstration and training for the physics moots for the competing teams. Thank you very much for joining us.
And don't forget to go and check your team page to make sure you haven't made any mistakes. And then click the button to watch the do's and don'ts.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
in a couple of weeks.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.